Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third session of the EOSC Future Open Days. Some of you I saw were here for past sessions as well. I see some people that have newly joined as well. In the first session today, we discussed the EOSC front office, what it is now, where we're hoping to go, its functionalities, and how it would support European research and researchers. And then in the previous session, we delved into research and specifically the science projects that we are running as part of EOSC Future, seeing how they are using EOSC, but also how they themselves are supporting EOSC and helping us build and optimize the system. Now, in this session, we are looking at what you can do. So everyone here, all EOSC stakeholders, how you can get involved in building and optimizing EOSC and how you can make it truly work for researchers. We'll have things for people that are EOSC pros and know EOSC inside out, but also for people that might have just discovered EOSC yesterday and also look to get involved. We'll have discussions of the EOSC Future user groups, EOSC working groups, calls that we are running, and the DIH expression of interest for business pilots. We'll discuss surveys, and we'll end with a lighter topic of the logo competition. We have a whole panel of speakers here to present those topics to you. First and foremost, Sara Garavelli from CSCIT Center for Science, who is the lead of our work package 10 on engagement and communication, supported by Sarah Jones, who's the engagement manager at Géant, and also she's wearing two hats, the EOSC Association Director. We have Najla Redberg from the University of Göttingen, who is here to present the RDA open calls, and Sai Hollinger, who is the strategy and innovation lead at the EGI Foundation, presenting the DIH expression of interest business pilots. And then last but not least, we have Ute Gunzenheimer, who is the designated Secretary General of the EOSC Association, and she will present the logo competition. One thing before I give the floor to our first speaker that I want to draw your attention to is that we will be using Slido to collect questions. And here is how you can join Slido. So you can type the link if you're very fast in the first line. You can go to slido.com and enter this code, or you can scan the QR code. And no worries if you haven't captured that. We will also be posting the link in the chat so that you can follow up there. So handing over the floor now to our panel of speakers, and hoping you will very much enjoy the session. I'm sure you will.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Katrine. So I'll just open up the slides for everybody and walk us through these. So as Katrine mentioned, we're talking today about how to help us create an EOSC that works. And there are a number of different topics that we will cover. We'll first talk about how you can help shape the future of EOSC by bringing your own expertise. And one of the primary ways of doing that is joining the EOSC Future user group, which is a group of researchers and other stakeholders who are helping give feedback on the different things that are being developed within EOSC. And we have a number of surveys or working groups that people can get involved in, and we'll flag some of those. We'll also talk specifically about the RDA open calls. There are a number of calls open at the moment that you can apply to be an ambassador in your community and to help develop standards and technologies that can enable the sharing of data across disciplines. We'll also then talk about opportunities to shape your research work or your business and tools by leveraging the different resources that are made available through EOSC Future and also the Infra EOSC 07 projects. So that's resources to help you access computing and also the Digital Innovation Hub expression of interests. And as Katrine mentioned, at the end, Ute Gunzenheimer, the Secretary General of EOSC, will talk about the branding competition that we're launching. So first off, I want to just begin by talking about how you can help us shape the future of EOSC by bringing your expertise in. One of the things we've done is set up a user group that I'll present to you and talk about some of the activities that these researchers are getting involved in. You're probably familiar with the concept of EOSC. What we're aiming to do is to move away from all the disconnected silos, the different research infrastructures that are not connected bringing those together in a federated infrastructure so that we can make it easier for researchers to find data, to access that, to get access to the appropriate tools so they can do their analysis, and to make their content more easily available to others. And the user group is a really important way of helping co-create EOSC to make sure that what we develop works for the different research communities, and to get feedback from those end users by testing things, by doing usability testing, by getting their requirements, and making sure that what we develop fits those needs. So it's really a way for us to kind of strengthen what's being developed, both in EOSC Future and other projects, so that we make sure there are benefits for researchers in their day-to-day work. And one of the hopes from the user group is that this group can also act as EOSC champions. They can share information with the different scientific communities about EOSC and about the services that have been useful to them. So the user group has 298 members, and they come from a wide range of scientific areas. You can see in the graph on the right, it's mainly the natural sciences and engineering and social sciences that are at the fore, but we have people from the humanities and medical sciences, and also from other areas, so from the visual arts or sports, and also music. And we have a number of people who are also experts in open science or information science, because it's not only researchers. The vast majority of the user group are either in full-time or part-time research roles, but some are also working on research support, so data steward type roles or librarians. And within the user group, we've also got a mix of different awareness of EOSC. So some people have been active in projects, but many are not fully aware of EOSC. And I think that's actually a really good benefit for the user group, because they're coming to this new, so they're able to give an observation as a kind of a new end user to see whether things work for them. We also have a very good geographic coverage on the user group, which is great to see because we want to engage all across Europe. There are a number of upcoming activities on the user group. We held a kickoff meeting a few weeks ago where we introduced the EOSC Future project and the work that we're doing and the kind of inputs we'd like from the user group. And what we're now doing is working with that community to profile their interests so we can understand what kind of activities to distribute to each group. And one of the first activities we've had, which I'll touch on in a moment, is a survey on the commercial data and services that are needed within EOSC so that we can steer the procurement work that we're doing. We're also planning work on the training priorities. We've been developing a roadmap for EOSC training, and we want to understand from the community which topics need to be covered first, but also what formats of training are most needed. And we're also going to be doing some usability work on the EOSC portal. You'll have seen that presented this morning in the front office if you were in the earlier session. And really there we want to understand whether the navigation and the workflows through the portal work for the end users. And we're also collaborating with the ESFRI group on their workshop in January and inviting contributions to that. Now, although we've already established a user group, we're also calling for further participation. So this is something that we'd be happy for you to disseminate to research communities that you're engaged with, or to colleagues, or to join yourself if you're also a researcher. So please do get involved in the user group. We're continually looking for new applications. So follow that link and we can make sure that's pasted in the chat for you too. As I mentioned, one of the first activities we had was on a survey of commercial services and data sets. There's already been some work to deliver cloud services through EOSC, through the OCA framework, but we want to extend on that. So we want to understand what additional commercial services research communities are using and may need access to through EOSC, so we can do additional procurement frameworks. In the survey, we're also asking about the data sets that researchers are paying for, so potentially for access to satellite imagery or census or health data. because again, these are things that we could offer as services through EOSC. And linked in with the Digital Innovation Hub, we're also wondering if there are particular services, tools, or data sets where additional development is needed. And that could be to improve the quality of the data, or to integrate different services, or to optimize the scalability. So these are the 3 topics that are being covered in that survey. The survey is open until the end of this week. So again, we'd encourage you to share this with your communities and help shape what we want to develop further in EOSC on the procurement side. There are also a number of working groups that have been set up through the architecture and interoperability work package within EOSC Future, and these are to look at the technical developments. There was an open call for these, and a number of groups were put forward, and they're now being established. And on the link at the bottom of this slide, you can see the wiki page where you can see the charters of these different groups. There will be further calls coming up, so if people think other topics are needed for working groups or want to get involved in those, you can also propose them. But so far, the topics that are being focused on is the compute continuum within EOSC, and making sure that we're connecting up the different compute resources. There's a metadata working group that's been proposed by Embry Fair. We also have a research product publishing framework, so making sure that we're making the data discoverable, and that's being led by OpenAir Nexus. As you'll have heard in the second session today, there's also a big focus on science projects and their use cases, and there's also a working group covering this. Now, these working groups are open to members wider than the EOSC Future Consortium, and we're also inviting contributions and feedback from the user group on these. There is also some internal work, some cross-work package groups to address certain topics like AAI that are needed for the basic operation of EOSC. With that, I'm going to hand over to Najla, who will pick up on the RDA open calls.
Okay, thanks a lot, Sarah. I hope you can all hear me all right. Shout out if you can't. Right, so my name is Najla. If you could just go back one slide, Sarah, because I just want to put this a bit in context. So this is another strand of engagement that EOSC Future is rolling out. And for those of you who are not familiar, RDA stands for the Research Data Alliance. I'm sure most of you know about this in the room. But this is a very bottom-up initiative, a global initiative really, that's working on solutions to enable the sharing and reuse of data. So it's really a grassroots organization, and it's very active. And the role here in EOSC Future is to start to engage and involve this community and this range of experts. Okay, next slide, Sarah, thanks. So in the context of EOSC Future, we have a very active program and running these RDA open calls. So as you can see, we have a budget of $1 million, but the emphasis is on running quite a lot of calls with quite low budgets, so smaller budgets, but very discipline specific or community specific or technical. And we're going to have, we're going to fund quite a lot of small projects, around 6 core topics. And many of them will have 1 phase or maybe even up to 3 phases. So the calls have started and we will run them to the end of the project. And I've put down here an email address where you can contact us for further questions, and also to ask you to take a look at the EOS Future Grants website, where these calls will be promoted and made available. Okay, next slide, please. So as I said, they're running in 6 different areas. So to say that these are not completely fixed, in that we're taking an agile approach. We could tweak them according to what happens in the context of the EOS Future project. So if there's something from Work Package 6 or the disciplinary communities that you heard in the session before, we may bring this in, or in particularly discipline-specific approach. But really there you can see in the hexagons the 6 areas we're working in. So we could set up fund working group in RDA to understand how EOSC solutions work, or cross-disciplinary grants or interoperability solutions on a more technical level. funding communities of practice and ambassadors, and implementation grants. So the idea is really to bring this knowledgeable community into EOSC and show how EOSC can, how they can show uptake and implementation of EOSC solutions. Okay, next slide. Thanks. So that's, as you can see here, this is a snapshot of the funding platform, which do take a look at. The first call, which actually runs for the continuity of the EOS Future project, is the call for external evaluators. We are setting up to ensure, that they are evaluated correctly, each of the calls. We will have a pool of external expert evaluators. We've already created quite a lot of evaluators. Not all of these evaluators will be used for each of the calls, or perhaps any of the calls, but it may be that evaluators have a particular disciplinary expertise that we will use to bring in and evaluate the calls. So those are the evaluators, and this is ongoing. And then these are the 3 calls that we have open at the moment. So the first one is the Optimizing Open Science Frameworks. This closes, next slide, please, Sarah. This closes the 30th of November, so you have a week to get an application in. If this interests you, do email us and ask us more about it. But the aim here is to take a look at the RDA outputs and guidelines and frameworks and examine how these might be optimized in the context of EOSC. So fairly technical, but it's more about maybe looking at the documentation. Is it fit for purpose? Does it need to be updated? And how would it roll out in the long term? So the grant is stated there. And by the way, all the apart from the evaluators, all the RDA open calls in EOS Future are only applicable for European individuals in European organizations. So the RDA domain ambassadors and the maintenance facilities are now opened. So the maintenance facility is one of the largest budgets in this program, and this is really to create a piece of software in order to put the RDA outputs in and make them visible in EOSC and curate them and make them available over a long period of time. So you can read about that on the EOS Future website. And then the next one, the ambassadors, this is exciting. We're going to fund around 10 or so domain ambassadors coming from a range of communities, disciplinary communities with specific expertise to really strengthen the outreach into EOSC and act as multipliers, create, for example, use cases or assess the engagement of EOSC in their own communities. So really engaging, involving disciplinary scientists and researchers who might be based in organizations or in infrastructures, to get them involved. So do take a look at that. Please do promote that in your networks. That will close in February next year, and do take a look at the EOS Future Grants portal and email us if you have any questions. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay,
excellent.
So
thanks, Najla.
I will pick up from here for the second part of this presentation. So as you have heard, in EOSC Future, we are not just looking for your individual expertise and knowledge to support what we are doing, but we are also trying to offer some opportunities through which we would like to support either your research or your business. And in particular, in this talk, we are going to address 2 of those activities. Of course, these are not the only ones. In the next days, you will hear more about training and other activities. But one that I would like to highlight here is the work that EOS Future is doing together with the Infra EOSC 07 projects. So EOS Future will deliver an operational EOSC platform, and to do that, we are collaborating with other projects, not just EOS 7, but today we will be focusing on that because we just signed a collaboration agreement with them. I don't know if everyone in the audience is familiar with EOS 7 projects, but these are projects, 5 projects that started early this year in January, and they will have a duration approximately until June 2023, except for one that is finishing at the end of 2022. But let's say that their duration is overlapping with EOS Future, and that's why we are trying to work together. And the main purpose of these projects is really to deliver additional resources that can be used in the EOS context. If you can move to the next slide. So I'm not going to go into the details of the offering of each of these projects, but I think that this slide will be very useful for you to check after the meeting, so to grasp an idea of the different activities that these projects are working on. And in particular, you see that, for example, the C-Scale project is really focusing on Pan-European Federation of Data and Computing Infrastructure Services for Copernicus. DICE is more focusing on provisioning data management services and storage resources. EGIAS is focusing on cloud compute and storage facilities, also platform as a service services and data spaces. OpenAir Nexus, it's more about scholarly communication services that will assist in publishing research, monitoring its impact, and helping promote the discovery. And Reliance is more on the support for multidisciplinary research, particularly in the area of earth science. The common denominator, one of the common denominators of these projects, is the announcement of the Eos portal with new resources. All these projects, and I invite you to check their websites, are also delivering some open calls through which you can access the services and the resources that they are providing. Next slide, please. As part of the collaboration, and these are the opportunities also through which you all can be engaged, we are launching in January monthly webinars, 1 hour webinars to present all the EOSC services that will be delivered also as part of these projects. So we will have topical sessions on data, compute, storage, and in those sessions, we will really go into the details of these services so you can understand what the services are about, how you can access them, and how you can use them. We are also planning an Eos Providers Day in spring 2022, where we would really like to focus on service providers, meaning what does it mean being an Eos service providers, who can join, what are the procedures, for example, for onboarding in the portal, but also many other aspects. So keep these in your radar. And finally, we are also planning to organize a joint hackathon between EOSC Future and Eos 7 projects to encourage the uptake of these resources. So this is a very high-level overview of what's coming up in the context of the collaboration with Eos 7. And for any questions, please use the Slido. I will pass now the floor to Sai.
Well, thanks very much. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sai Holsinger. My day job is at the EGI Foundation as the Strategy and Innovation Lead, but in this context, I've been serving as the coordinator for this Eos Digital Innovation Hub, which was originally set up in the Eos Hub project in terms of a means for facilitating joint collaborations with between the EOSC and the private industry, which now, thanks to the EOSC Future project, will be continuing to try to expand upon what was created inside of EOSC Hub. So for those that may be new to digital innovation hubs, this is a wider shared conceptual model for describing joint innovation actions between public entities and private organizations. So as one of the components of the overall European Open Science Cloud mission is to ensure that companies can participate within it and also gain from the benefits from what the EOSC is providing, and also vice versa. The EOSC can generate benefits from the private industry as well. So the EOSC Digital Innovation Hub is a dedicated mechanism for facilitating these kind of collaborations. So on tomorrow morning, we will have a dedicated session to go into the further details about what is our plans and strategies via EOSC Future, provide a little bit more details with regards to what ongoing collaborations and pilots that we are working with right now. But we're happy to take advantage of this opportunity, at least to announce one currently open activity that we have for onboarding potential new business pilots. And what do we mean by business pilots? Is just our means for articulating not only who the company is, but what are their objectives, what specific EOSC services that they would like to take advantage of, understand, not only do the technical requirements, the service provisioning, but also do the promotion of what results that they achieve via the business pilots themselves, because small companies tend to get a lot of added value by participating in an international environment that the EOSC offers. So we have an open call for expressions of interest for any commercial company that is interested in doing joint innovation actions with us. So if those of you in the audience have contacts or are a private company as well, we would definitely appreciate the circulation of this. The application closes on the 3rd of December, but we will do this week on Thursday afternoon. We will have a dedicated webinar for kind of going into a little bit more of the details about what we're looking for, how the application process works, and then open the floor to any questions that anyone might have. But for now, I'll close it off there, and please join our session tomorrow morning for further information.
Excellent, thanks, Sai. So
Yeah,
the
thanks
final topic we're going to cover is the logo competition that we're opening up through the EOSC Association to define a new logo for EOSC. And I'll co-present this with Ute Gunzenheimer.
Oh, that is me. It was the idea to introduce myself. Hello, I'm Ute Gunzenheimer. I'm the Secretary General of the EOSC Association.
Excellent, thanks, Ute. So the first thing we want to explain is really why we need a logo for EOSC. I think, you know, a picture's worth 1,000 words. It's very useful to show the concept that we're trying to get to through EOSC. But if we don't have coordination, the thousands of different pictures don't necessarily tell a good story. And I think this is part of the problem we've got into within EOSC.
Indeed, and this is what you do if you do a quick search on EOSC logos that you can find out there on the web. Then, I mean, this is a search I did some weeks ago, just for currently ongoing EOSC-related projects, and I've just have seen 5 new logos that Sarah has just presented. So you see, there's a plethora of EOSC logos out there, and they are not really consistent. And the question is, do we miss an opportunity to tell one consistent EOSC story here by working with one visual approach? And that's why we think we should indeed do that. And Sarah, if you continue clicking, please. Yes, there is this plethora of logos out there that have been created under Horizon 2020 projects. I think that's a very big visual fragmentation of the EOSC landscape. And this means that we have a very limited brand awareness for EOSC itself. That's why we thought it would be good to find a new logo and to use the upcoming Horizon Europe framework program as the splendid opportunity we have here to consolidate the visual landscape. Because in Horizon Europe, the newly awarded projects, they are asked to ensure complementarity of outcomes. Proposals are expected to cooperate and align with activities of the EOSC partnership and to coordinate with relevant initiatives and projects contributing to the development of EOSC. And that's why, that's the next click. Oh, there is a next click. Yeah, we would like to use this opportunity of the upcoming Horizon Europe project to create an EOSC brand during the coming decade of the partnership to establish a consistent corporate design framework for all Horizon Europe projects. And this is what we're going to work on, and how we're going to do it, Sarah will explain.
Excellent, thanks. So the main thing about how we're going to do this, we're going to launch a Europe-wide logo competition, and this is the kind of first information we're putting out about that. So we encourage you to share it with others. And this competition will invite young designers who are enrolled in different arts or graphic design schools to create a new kind of visual identity for EOSC. There will be an expert jury to assess the technical quality in the first round of evaluation. We're bringing together representatives from the association, from the different DGs within the commission, and also from different art schools. We'll have 4 kind of design experts as well on that jury. And then we'll also shortlist from that initial evaluation and put a selection of logos out for voting by the broader community, because we want you to also have a say on the future kind of visual identity of EOSC. So there are a number of things we want the logo to convey. EOSC has a very broad mission. We've talked before about how we're trying to federate services and have an integrated platform to enable open science and the discovery of data so that we're facilitating research. So we want to try and get some of these concepts across in the logo, the fact that we're covering all scientific communities, a wide variety of data types, and that really the added value for researchers is that they can share with one another, they can combine the different data and services so that they can undertake their research more effectively. There are some design specifications we put in here. The colors are open. We want people to define a color palette that works for EOSC. It should have maximum 2 main colors. And we want to try and move away from the existing visual identity, this kind of European look with the cloud and the stars. So we state explicitly in the guidelines that we shouldn't be using those models. We also think EOSC already has enough traction as a name, so we don't need to spell it out in full and write the European Open Science Cloud. The acronym is sufficient, but we do want some kind of graphical element, ideally, that will also help with co-branding for the different projects that come on board, as Uta mentioned. And obviously we need to meet the different web accessibility guidelines, and we need to have a logo that's flexible enough to work in different formats and on different spaces, on social media, websites, and on published materials. In terms of the timing, the logo competition will launch later this week. So we'll share links in the other sessions that we're running as part of this program. We'll be rolling it out to various communities. So we've been compiling a database of the different graphic design schools across Europe so that we're able to push it out to those directly. And obviously we'll use our social media and other networks to push that out. The competition itself will close at the end of January. And then in February, we'll do an initial kind of check of the logos, make sure they're valid, make sure they don't have any IP conflicts, because the IP needs to belong to the designer who's done the submission. And we'll have the expert jury do the initial shortlisting. We'll then have the competition open for a couple of weeks for public voting in March. And then through the EOSC Future project, we'll develop some guidelines for the Future Horizon Europe projects and others on how they can use the logo. And that's so that we're ready for the start of the new projects in May. So things you can do to help us promote the competition. We're going to be hosting this on the EOSC Association website, so eosc.eu. And we'd like to ask you to promote the competition through your various networks and channels. So if you're using social media, if you have your project websites, if you have other newsletters or ways you could push this campaign out, we'd be very grateful of your support on that. Obviously, if you're connected with relevant design or arts departments at local universities or graphic design schools, please also disseminate to those networks. And we will be producing a kind of comms package. So there'll be banners you could put on your website and links to the competition, or details you could put in email footers or elsewhere. And we strongly encourage you to participate in the public voting when this opens up as well. And if you're applying for some of those New Horizon Europe grants, as Uta said, we want to try and have an overall look and feel for EOSC as, one entity. So we'd encourage you to use the new logo for your own branding too. And that brings us to the end of ways that you can engage through the user groups, through the different open calls we have or projects, and also the logo competition. And I'd now like to hand it over to Katrin, who will open up the kind of questions we're receiving through the Slido. And I can maybe stop my screen share in case we want to bring up that page too.
Thanks a lot, Sarah. I'm going to show you which kind of questions we've been getting in. Here you go. You should now be able to see my screen. I see the question that has been upvoted most is one that we've seen before, namely, what is the relationship between the EOSC Future working groups and the EOSC Association task forces? I don't know which one of you would like to field that question.
Yeah, I'm happy to start on that, and others are very welcome to contribute. So the EOSC Future working groups are run largely within the project, and they're really to help with project activities. So the work we're doing around kind of metadata and discovery, or the research product publishing, or the computing. So they're very focused on kind of steering the work within the project and helping to deliver on that. The EOSC Association task forces have a broader remit. There are 13 task forces under a number of advisory groups, although both groups are open to members from all over, the EOSC Association task forces are primarily people from the wider community, and they're again trying to provide a steer on the developments and the recommendations that are made in EOSC. I think with those task forces, they're going to be feeding more into the EOSC Association board and through that to the European Commission on things like the future work programme and the priorities for that, and also the areas of activity that need more emphasis. So there's a slight difference that one's a little bit more project focused, but there is a collaboration between the groups too. And there will be a session later in the week that Licia Florio from Géant runs on those EOSC Future working groups. So you can find out more about them there.
I don't know whether there's anything that's one of the other speakers would like to add to that. If not, we can move on to another question. Another question that got an upvote is the question whether there's any collaboration or alignment foreseen between our ambassador program and EOSC pillar ambassador programs.
Okay, well, I can take that then. So thanks a lot for telling us about that and flagging it up. That's really useful. And I think there are a lot of ambassador programs. I mean, I'm guessing that the EOS pillar one is very much targeted about sort of EOSC and communication around EOSC within the ambassadors' institutions and speaking to decision makers about EOSC. I'm assuming, and I think that's definitely somewhere we can align. I suppose what's specific about the RDA EOSC Ambassadors Program is that one of the criteria is to have an awareness and be involved in RDA, or sit on a working group and be active in the outputs and in a way to build the bridge between these RDA working groups and EOSC and the science clusters and so on. So that could be a specificity of the RDA Ambassador Program, but definitely we'd be interested in reaching out to you and finding out more and aligning our efforts there. So thank you.
Maybe if there's the person who posted this question can get in touch with Najla to sort this out further, because I think it's something that is interesting for us to know. Then another question is whether, so we've mentioned the Infra EOSCO 7 projects, whether we also have plans to collaborate with the regional projects. Maybe Sarah, that's a question for you.
Yeah, indeed, I can take the question. And as I mentioned in my talk, so today we just discussed a bit the collaboration with the Infra EOSCO 7, but indeed we are also looking forward to collaborate with the regional projects. And actually we are already doing that in EOSC Future, especially when it comes to the integration of the national regional catalogs into EOSC, but it's not just that. So there are collaborations going on already with the regional projects. And if there are any further suggestions for any other types of collaboration, just reach out to us.
Yeah, I think for everyone present here that has questions about the communication, a good address to contact is info@eoscfuture.eu, and we'll post that in the chat as well. And then we can pass on your question to whoever needs, whoever is best placed to respond to it. Next question that we have in Slido is, do we have enough composable or interoperable resources, services, or data through the EOS portal today to engage intensively with the wider research community And I'm happy to pass that question on to one of our speakers, but I would also be happy to put on my other hat as someone working on the communications for this project to have a stab at that, if that's okay with you. Yeah. So I would say right now, we have enough services and data available to engage with the wider research community to bring them on board to do further requirements gathering or to further build EOSC. If we're really talking about heavily promoting this as something for them to use in their work, that might be a bit too premature. And we're also not really doing that. So in our strategy, that comes a bit later. It's sort of, you need to balance them out and need to be enough things there for them, for it to be useful for them to use. On the other hand, we also need to make sure that we're getting enough resources in for it to become interesting for them to use. So that's more the focus of the really communications that we're doing right now, is getting more resources in and targeting providers, whereas the engagement now right now does focus on the wider research community, but more to get them involved in further building EOSC. Does that cover it? Because I'm speaking for all of you as well now. Okay, anyone want to add something to that question, or shall we take another one?
And maybe I can just add that all the activities that we are doing together with the other projects on services and resources are also meant to work towards this aim, to enrich the offering and to make sure that we have a broad spectrum of resources to offer to the research community. Yeah,
exactly. And I see here a question that should probably go to Sai. So does the EOS DIA business pilots include data publishers, or are partnerships with commercial data providers, white label service, in another work package?
So I think the short answer is yes, but it kind of depends on what we mean, because even within the business pilots themselves, you will have what the commercial company wants to do in terms of the participation, whether it's providing something and how does that provision go into, let's say, the pilot, versus are they requesting that service from the EOSC? And I think, so the short answer is yes, because we now have a much, let's say, more active, tighter participation from Open Air, which offers a couple services here in terms of data to be published in order to be registered as well as access to other research data. However, we are interested in just simply exploring data provider agreements with really any organization that could augment the data that would be made available to potential SMEs that would like to consume them. And I think this is kind of one area that we really didn't manage to get through during the EOS Hub project, which is one area that we would like to kind of focus on through EOSC Future. And there is another activity that we're doing in coordination with another task. It's called 8.1 around the procurement. And there is a survey that's available right now. And one of the questions in the surveys is terms of like, what are the needs around specific data sets, and whether or not we could procure data sets that might only be available, for an example, on a subscription service, and then make those available as well. So there's lots of activities, I think, that can be supported in this, but there's different roles and different mechanisms for this to happen. But happy to discuss this further offline if you would like, because I think this is a really interesting aspect. I hope that answers your question, at least in part.
If not, feel free to post follow-up questions to Slido as well. And I saw that Sai's discussion already triggered another question about commercial services specifically. So someone asked whether commercial services and data sets are also part of what EOSC Future has planned, and whether we are collaborating with the OCRA project. Don't know which one of you would want to take that question.
Yeah, I can take that if you like. So the survey I flagged that we've pushed out to the user group is about an activity that's within the EOSC Future project. So we're essentially building on the existing OCRA framework, and we're looking at what additional services and data sets people need that they don't already have access to. So there will be further procurement work happening through EOSC Future to add services to EOSC, and that's directly linked to the existing OCRA work. That's essentially the starting point we have, and then we're looking at what else is needed by the community.
Okay, and then I saw that a question came in that is for maybe more for Najla. For the open call on optimizing RDA outputs, is there a preference or have any outputs been prioritized? And I think there was another one as well asking about which specific activities you would be hosting under the ambassadors call.
Okay. So for the ambassadors call, we have some sort of use cases already listed in the call itself. I'll put the URL in, but I would imagine, I mean, it's not a huge amount of resources, so it would be embedded in their daily work, your daily work as an ambassador, working with your discipline-specific community. So asking them, you know, are your resources already visible in EOSC? How would they be optimized to be visible? What are your requirements? Do they need further reuse of your disciplinary outputs, things like that? So really focusing on the thematic side of things. We would ask in the call itself, we ask the ambassador to give an overview of their program, of how they would use these resources. And I would think sort of working closely with their disciplinary teams would be an example, or promoting, you know, EOS content and content for content providers within their institution or their organization. So there's a number of different ways that they can work across their networks. It's not huge work, but it's to be embedded in their daily day-to-day work with this additional aspect of what does this mean for EOSC? What does my content and my output, how could it be made more visible, and what use is it? And then we can pull that back into the requirements gatherment for EOSC as well from the user community would be really useful. And making this bridge between those disciplinary communities and EOSC. And the second question, optimizing frameworks. There are already a number of frameworks existing in the RDA on the RDA portal. You can see, and I would say probably based something loosely around this. There is no preference, and we're very interested to see any of the applications that come in, but they should really be based around the RDA work that's already happened in the working group and interest group. They should be fairly concrete. I hope that's answered that. I don't know if anyone else wants to step in on the RDA front. But
It's so as well that Hilary Hanaho posted a few examples of previous RDA ambassadors to the chat. So anyone who's interested can have a look at that. Then there's one question left that we haven't replied to, which is maybe a stupid question, someone says, and I mean, there's no stupid questions, so we'll answer it anyway. Wouldn't it be better to evaluate a concept or ID for the new logo for EOSC and then do the technical quality check afterwards? I'm happy to pass on this question to either Ute or Sarah, but I also remember that it was my decision to do it this way. So if you say no, you're on your own, defend it, then I'm also happy to do that.
No, because I think technical, we had that in the presentation, is really just a shortcut for assessing whether the submitted proposals meet the criteria. And the criteria have two components, a content component as well as a real technical design quality criterion. And we have a mixed jury that will consist out of EOSC experts representing the association, EOSC Future, and the European Commission. And we do have design experts who also see, is this, I mean, logo not only appealing, but is it also usable? And this is what we want to assure in this first, what we call technical assessment.
Yeah, I think we discussed it. A worst possible scenario would be we have a logo, looks amazing, expresses exactly what we want, but as soon as we give it to a designer, they say, I can't work with this because it doesn't size correctly, because the colors are too different on a screen and in print. So that's why we decided on a technical check first. I think rest assured, we're not going to accept a logo, right, Ute, that just doesn't represent what we want it to represent. So that it needs to be the best of both worlds. It needs to be a technical good fit, and it needs to represent EOSC well.
Yes.
Then we have time for one more question. Should anyone post it to the Slido or the chat for those who can't join Slido. If not, we can also wrap it up here. Then I'm wondering whether any of our panel have sort of final takeaway messages or something that you really want to draw people's attention to. If not, then let's wrap up here. So as the panel said, the EOS Future user group call remains open. That's been adapted on the website as well. We saw that someone posted to the chat that there was still a wrong deadline for that. That is now gone. So feel free to share that in your network so other people can join in. And then later this week, we're launching the logo competition. Should you know young designers, anyone studying design, feel free to share. And we're also looking forward to seeing you voting on that when we consult the EOS ecosystem again to find the best logo. And thank you all for joining. And we're hoping to see you tomorrow. This is it for today, but we'll be back tomorrow at 9 with more sessions for the EOS Future Open Days. Have a nice day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.